As most Americans say, only two things are certain: death and taxes. The founding of our independent nation was instigated by the fact that the colonies believed that they shouldn't have to pay taxes without representation, without being counted as part of the whole and sovereign body under the British royal crown. This led to an uprising that birthed the most powerful and influential nation of this and the two past centuries. Though once independence was won, our founding fathers needed to sort out the matter of taxation. How could the parts of the new nation, namely the colonies, contribute to the betterment of the whole? How were South Carolina and Pennsylvania supposed to be linked and benefit from each other's crops and budding industries? This past Friday was April 15th, Tax Day in America. Hopefully this doesn't startle any of you. As we talked about last week, the offertory is the part at Mass when we offer the Lord from the money that we have earned this past week. We are focusing on this portion of the Mass because it sometimes gets viewed as church tax, and this is not so. I, as a priest, give back to the church in a tithe, which is nestled somewhere between my car expenses and my retirement savings. I aim for the traditional 10% and above. We offer the church from our earnings in the same way that we offer our country from our earnings, so that it can provide for things that we cannot give ourselves: military defense, roads, coordination with other countries for safe international travel, and the like. So too, on a practical level, we provide for the needs of this particular church, St. Eligius, for the upkeep of the building, to pay for the staff and wages of those who educate our children in the way of sacraments and the faith. We also participate in the greater needs of this Archdiocese of Denver by giving to the Catholic Appeal, Archbishop's Appeal. This may indeed seem like a tax, except that, on the part of the giver, it is freely given. There is, however, an entirely different portion of the offertory, which is even more important than passing around the basket. And this shows that this part of the Mass is not a church tax. The offertory is the part of the Mass when you, the faithful, and me, the priest, present to the Lord our unique sacrifices, sufferings, joys, and sorrows to the Lord. In the old days, the community would actually bake the unleavened bread and ferment the wine that was to be offered at the Eucharistic sacrifice. So when you see the family bringing up the bread and wine in today's Mass, that's a remnant from that old practice. It's also a really good reminder at that part of the Mass to offer the Lord these joys and sufferings from the week, that they too, with the bread and wine, may be placed upon the altar. Why do we do this? Because as Jesus said in today's Gospel, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me, and I give them eternal life." But if Christ gives us eternal life, and if he is infinitely perfect and blessed in himself, what can we possibly give him in return? We can give our lives. Now that's easy to say, but how do we give our lives if we don't know the joys and sufferings and sorrows and pleasures that make up our lives? The offertory is a beautiful moment sandwiched in between the Creed and the Eucharist, in which we publicly profess, "I believe in God." Then afterwards, we ask this, Father the Almighty, for the things that we need: unity and love in the Church, justice and peace in the world, comfort for the sick, the suffering, and the dying, the other certain thing in this life. On the very day in which you die, wouldn't you want the whole world to be attentive to the ever-standard prayers of intercessions for the dying? Then pray with a new resolve and invigoration for the dying in today's Mass. Also, Bring your own intentions to Mass. Your kids, your extended family members, co-workers. By your baptism, you are made priests in a different sense than I am a priest. But still, priests are able to offer sacrifices and intentions to God. The offertory is the privileged time for this. I've heard it said that the reason golf is not a boring game is because every game is different. Though the course stays the same, the weather and the golfer's ability is always constantly in flux, as well as the game itself from shot to shot. A golfer is never positioned in exactly the same place. Just so with the Mass, though the structure of the Mass is the same, the content of the week certainly changes, as well as our own ability to engage the spiritual nature of the Mass. My invitation to you is this. When you see that family coming forward today to bring up the bread and the wine which is to be offered, tell the Lord in your own heart one joy and one difficulty from this past week. Then name one family member, co-worker, or other person in your life who could use some prayer. Next week, come to Mass 10 minutes early, earlier than you usually do, and make a short list, 3 of each. Let this be a more permanent practice in your prayer life, so that at the moment of the offertory, you too, with me, can offer to the Lord the joys and sacrifices, along with this bread and wine. The offertory is not a time of taxes, but a time of gifts. We give to God from what He has given to us, from the earnings of the week, and from the joys of the week. We also present our burdens and struggles. We do this because of the lines of the second reading. Christ is the Lamb who is in the center of the throne, who will shepherd us and lead us to the springs of life-giving water, and God will wipe away every tear from our eyes. He can do this if we but present to Him our burdens. Praise be Jesus Christ.
Amen.